Well, good afternoon, Mary Ann. I am very pleased to have you present and give us some information that's going to be very, very, very useful for those who are either in the midst of or have gone through a divorce. So thank you. For those of you who aren't familiar, Mary Ann Hughes is someone who has both the background and has a business degree. I think she's an MBA. And I'm really pleased to hear how does one go about a divorce, especially in neurodiverse populations. So, Marianne, please take it away.
Thank you, Alan. Pleasure to be here and sharing about my experience and how to help others going through this process. And even for those who may not be facing divorce or haven't gone through it, there's a good chance that somebody may in the future. The stats are very high that divorce, unfortunately, is very common in these populations. And you may know somebody, even if you're not going through it, or hopefully your marriage is intact. There's always people out there who could use support and knowledge. So definitely to share some of the information that I share with others, let people know that there is hope and there are resources out there to help. And so given that, so my background is that I'm a mom of two kids, now young adults on the autism spectrum, opposite ends. And about 5 years ago, I faced divorce and I didn't know really what to do, how to approach it, how to navigate it, and how to support my kids through their process. And that was my goal in the divorce, was to make sure that my kids came through it in the best way possible and that I would help plan for their needs, short and long term, so that we would all have a good result afterwards.
Could you maybe dive in a bit about the statistics in terms of this population and divorce? How frequent do you see that?
Yeah, sure. So there's some debate about the actual number, but I've seen numbers in psychology today that have the number as high as 85 or even 87%. So I can't, say that's the fact, but it is high. The typical divorce rate is about 50%. And so in my personal experience and from other experts I've worked with, we see definitely a higher rate of divorce among families that have a child with autism, other neurodiversity, or other kind of disabilities. And so that's for a lot of reasons. Part of it is the extra stress, perhaps, on a marriage. But I never want to say it's because of the child or the child causing it. I think some marriages just aren't strong enough for whatever reason to withstand that extra stress and all the demands that go into being a caregiver and provider for a child that has extra challenges and needs.
So let's assume, for the sake of conversation, that you're thinking that you're in a relationship, have a neurodiverse child. What would you say to that individual as far as planning or thinking in terms of, maybe a divorce is preferential for the relationship for all parties? How would you go about organizing that? Tell me what you're thinking, please.
Right. So I had a situation recently where a couple came to me to try to help them have discussions about the state of the marriage and what their next steps should be. Now, I will say most of my work is done with one parent to help them advocate. But in this case, both parents came to me, and so I was more of a neutral party to help them kind of connect and figure out what was best for them. And so I think both parents kind of came in initially thinking, okay, she's going to give us advice to make things better. But as a result of their discussion, they on their own determined that staying together wasn't the best answer for them, and that for their kids to have a happy, healthy home and relationship with each of the parents, it would be better if the parents did go on the road to separation and divorce. And so my goal is not to tell people to get divorced or encourage divorce. It's to see, okay, what's going to be best for them and best for the children. And so whether it's a joint decision, which sometimes it is, and sometimes one parent may be taken by surprise. That happens a lot, or not planning for that. It's not their choice, and they really don't want the divorce. But in most states, if one party wants a divorce, it's going to happen. And so we have to come to the acceptance that this is the situation that we're dealing with. So given that, whether it's one person deciding or mutually deciding, how can we go through this process so that the child's needs and their perspectives are taken into account and held at the forefront of the whole situation and all the decisions that we make? So some people go into divorce thinking it's a win-lose type situation. I'm going to do what I can to maximize my benefits or, think what I can get out of the divorce, percentages in terms of division of property and child support, spouse support, whatever you can get, whatever is the norm in your state or things that people might typically ask for. Another parent may say, well, I don't want to have to give, or the part with, my income if I'm the primary breadwinner and so on. And so it becomes a battle sometimes of what's better from the, if it's a litigated process or people come at it as a conflict situation to kind of be in a fighting type situation. I propose that we should look at it differently. As a parent of a child with a disability or special needs or autism, whatever it might be, we're going to be parents of that child forever. We're going to have to co-parents, not like typically in divorce. Once a child is 18, those responsibilities and financially and perhaps parenting and other things. A lot of times our children with autism may never fully be independent or at different levels of independence. And how do we help them no matter where they're at? And so that's going to require both parents to continue to provide support, encouragement, whether it's the day-to-day, taking care of their needs or what in terms of caregiving responsibilities, or whether it's financially supporting them. And so the question becomes, how can we do that together so that both parents are involved and that the child is not put in the middle of a situation and feeling the conflict between the parents. So at the end of the day, we want to do what's right for our kids, hopefully. And so let's look at it from that perspective. What does this child need to be successful? And how can we, as both parents, work to make that happen? And so that then those other decisions become easier, hopefully, and not as conflict driven and not as me versus you, but how can we work together so that our child is taken care of?
Are you using a checklist? I mean, this is a unique circumstance in some ways. Tell me how you proceed. So you get a call from a potential client. Fill me in. What happens next?
So I find out what's important to them, what's their situation, and what are they looking for, and what are their concerns. So depending where they are in the process, some people going through the grief cycle may be at the denial phase or the anger phase or depression. So we kind of have to figure out where we are so that we eventually get to the acceptance phase. But once we're there, it's easier to make good decisions and proceed in a manner that takes the divorce from being an emotional process to more of a business, legal, and financial transaction, which at the end of the day, that's what it is. And so that's why I bring my business background into it, to try to look at it as a business proposition. You want to work with your soon-to-be ex-spouse or ex-spouse as you would in a business transaction, right? You want to treat them professionally. You want to see what their interests are and have them learn about your interests, as well as how can we then work together to help the kids. And so in terms of a checklist, I kind of developed a little system that I use based on my experience as a parent going through this, as well as a coach. And so I call it RISE, R-I-S-E, where each of the different letters stands for different things to think about, consider, and do in your divorce. So I even created a little course about it. I'm going to develop a whole program around it. But basically, the first part is to kind of realize where you are. We talked about where you are in the cycle, kind of plan for the future. The I is about investigating and understanding what you're going to need, or what really the child's going to need going forward, so you can have discussions that have a monetary value to them, right? Because we don't want to say, we want, X amount of dollars when, we may not have those funds or resources available. So we want to look at what that child's going to need, perhaps some programs that they're either in or will be in the future, and what do those cost? And that's where we kind of make decisions about how we can support that child or other instruments that we might use to later fund that. While people, think, okay, well, I'll just deal with what we are dealing with now and think about the future later. My kids are becoming adults during my divorce. So I had to not only go through divorce, but also a whole transition planning and future financial planning as part of my process. That's why it took a long time and and was very complicated. And so people need to start thinking about that, even if your kids are young. And granted, you won't have all the answers, and we don't know the prognosis of your child and what that child may be able to do in the future. But even though we want to hope for best case, we kind of want to plan for worst case sometimes. What might my child need, and how would we together as co-parents be able to meet those needs? So that's how that comes into play. And then the S part is in terms of special needs considerations and support teams and who's there to kind of help you through this process, as well as self-care is an important part. And then E is kind of looking at the future, how to express yourself and how to embrace the future as well. So I kind of said a lot, big mouthful there, but those are some of the key areas to think about. And definitely each situation is unique. So definitely I learn about their situation and how to support them in their process.
So before we started our conversation in the record mode, you had also mentioned that you took advanced training in arbitration. So how often does that play a part in your interaction with your couples?
Right. So I will say I just went through that training for arbitration this past week. But what I will say is that as much as we can, we want to try to have discussions about the divorce before, when possible, if we're hopefully on good terms, about what we want this divorce to look like and try to come to decisions even before we go to lawyers. Because once people go to lawyers, then it takes on kind of a different tone for different reasons, and they're each there to advocate for their client. I would say you could work with a mediator as well to kind of help you have discussions, even either with or without lawyers, to try to see what works out for families. And then the arbitrator comes in when you can't make a decision. So they're going to make a decision for you. So it's kind of like going to a judge. So it doesn't have to be for the whole divorce. It could be for one specific aspect that you just can't come to agreement on. And that will save you lots of time, money, and effort too, rather than having to go through mediation over and over again and keep engaging lawyers and have a prolonged process because you can't agree on certain issues. Some people end up going to trial for those reasons. When maybe you can go to arbitration and just get that one issue settled and then move on with the rest of your divorce.
Okay, good, very good point. So I'm hearing instead of trying to eat the whole elephant, you're eating a single piece of the pie, whatever may be the case. Okay.
Exactly. And that's how really you should approach divorce. It seems it's very overwhelming because there are a lot of decisions to make and a lot of impacts that it will have. But like you said, we can't eat the whole elephant at once. We want to break down the whole divorce process into manageable chunks. And so a divorce coach can help you, good attorney, whatever it might be. But their focus is a little bit different. They're there to take care of you legally. As a divorce coach or some other kind of advocate can help you kind of, manage how you get prepared for that process, make sure that you do meet your deadlines that your attorney is going to need, and support you and maybe help you think about other ways to consider some things. Maybe there's some creative solutions or different ways to look at different perspectives that may then influence how your divorce proceeds and how you portray yourself in that process as well.
Do you ultimately prepare, I'm just thinking aloud, do you prepare a document for both parties? How's the interaction? So you've spoken to these preferably both parties, hopefully they're still in the midst of. How do you handle homework or written assignments? Is that part of this? How does that work? Tell me more, please.
Sure. So we can. So in another certification I got recently or training was a parent coordinator. So that is a more structured approach where there may be, goals per session. This would also be done after divorce. If for some reason we're not on the same page and having conflicts in terms of parenting and how things should happen, then we can bring the parties together, individual sessions as well to come to agreement and learn maybe some different strategies and techniques. And so those things can be documented. There could be guides, and every professional is going to handle this differently. But for sure, we can create memorandums of understanding, kind of document the agreed upon positions, So that way, when you do take it to the next level, say to an attorney, you can say, these are the things that we've already agreed upon, how we'd like to handle our divorce. And so it could be as simple as having attorneys then write it up and incorporate all the legal language and things that need to be done there. So in some things are done in a more confidential manner, where sometimes they don't want the documentation. If it's just one party maybe working with me, then they're taking their own notes, and it's something just to support them. So it just depends on the situation. We can either do it as a formal type situation where there are agreements in writing that people then can take and go forward with that, or it could just be more informal as well.
Are there other individuals like yourself who are doing exactly this? And tell me more about the field. It's definitely not something that I personally, as a clinician, deal with as much as you do. So fill me in.
Yeah. So I guess I would say I'm one of the few that does this, and every person does it in their own unique ways. So when I was going through divorce, I really couldn't find any resources to help. I didn't know there was such a thing as divorce coaches, first of all. But when I did in my process and decided that's what I want to do, my passion became to help others going through that process. And so I then found this certified divorce coach certification. And I asked them at the time, well, do you have a special needs component? Like, no, we have some people who come to us, but we don't have that right now. And so I'm proud to say that I helped inspire that certification. So now there is a special needs certified divorce coach certification program, which now I'm an instructor as well. I helped develop the program. And so for people who are certified divorce coaches, they can get to the next level, have a certification program where myself and other people who are certified divorce coaches and other experts in special needs and planning will teach different components of that course to help people. Because like you said, at the beginning of our conversation, this is a huge issue that affecting so many families. And so as much as I'd like to help all the families out there, that's really not doable. I'm trying to do more to be able to do some group coaching and reach more people. So that is my goal, to be able to get more information out there. But like you said, a lot of people don't know these resources exist, but there is help out there. There are frameworks to go through, things to think about, checklists, as you mentioned, of things that we need to think about and do as part of our process so that we get a good result and our kids are in a good place afterwards, and so that we can look at life after divorce differently as well.
Okay, so let's talk about ancillary care help that you can bring to the table. You've seen these individuals, they're obviously entrenched in going separate directions. Whom else do you bring to the table? What other resources are available for someone who's in that position of going through divorce?
Sure. So definitely a mental health professional is a good person to have on the team, whether they're working with the parents or with the child. I can tell you, I found that depending on the level of your child, it may be hard finding a professional who is able to have a true therapy session with them in terms of counseling. So just as an aside, what I did for my child is I developed a social story for divorce. And I know in the autism community, we use social stories in a lot of context, but I created one called What's Happening to My Family. And I'm happy to share that. I've actually shared it on my YouTube channel, so people are welcome to get ideas for their situation, because you want to help the child process what's happening and what they can expect. Because, as a lot of this audience knows, kids with autism have a hard time with transitions and change. So we want to make that process as positive as possible. And so in addition to a mental health professional, if that works for you all, whoever's, needing that support. And I will say a mental health professional kind of focuses more on the past and what got you to this point, and a coach more so deals with the present and planning for the future. That's kind of the difference there. And definitely you want to consider having a financial person on your team to help you understand those costs that we talked about. What's it going to take to raise that child? To what are the future costs? What do we need to consider as we're thinking about divorce and planning for the future, hopefully doing it together, things that come into play. And if you're not doing it together, if you have different perspectives, then that one person, that financial person, can help the one parent kind of create different scenarios in a case to then discuss with the other party and with the legal team as well. This is a certification called a chartered special needs consultant. That's a special kind of a financial planner that has a lot of experience and training in the special needs arena. And then there's definitely going to find an attorney who's experienced with special needs cases. And even though some say they have that experience, it's very few that truly have a lot of experience and really know what to do, because it's very important to have the legal language done correctly, because in the divorce decree, you're going to be sharing that with, say, Social Security Administration when you're applying for SSI and other things. And you have to be real careful about how money is being funneled to the parent, especially to the child, because there's a limit to how much a child can have in their name. And if things are not done a certain way and protected for the future, they may be inadvertently disqualified for some programs or benefits either now or in the future. So it's really important to work with people who understand that. And that includes then an estate planning attorney. And so sounds like a lot of people, but what that person does is helps you develop the first and third party special needs trusts that will be then referenced in that divorce decree or set up later, but then it could be mention of that. And then they can help you maybe discuss things about future, whether it be guardianship or other kinds of special needs planning. They can help there. And so, yeah, there's a whole team of people that can help in addition to these divorce professionals. Then, definitely reaching out to where the child maybe goes to school or goes to therapy. They can definitely help support that child during that transition so they know what's happening. Some people like to kind of keep divorce to themselves, that this is happening in their household, but really by letting the community know and the village that's helping with your child, they can look out for things and maybe have an explanation for why little Johnny is having aggression or kind of, being more introverted or whatever it might be. So we want to involve people so they can support us and support our kids as well.
So I'm hearing you bring in this whole group to enable the process. And I've got to tell you, I'm going ka-chink, 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 ka-chink. It sounds incredibly expensive. And I'd love you to maybe take a few moments to talk about what are the costs involved, what's typical in your experience, and how does one navigate that? Before you say anything about that, I heard you say indirectly that you've got a coloring book that's coming to bear. You didn't know this yet, but I saw a coloring book from the description that you started with the families changing gears, moving in different directions, etc. Go ahead. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So that is a goal I have, to create something that parents can use. So yeah, definitely I'll look into the coloring book idea and connect with you on that. But in terms of the cost, I will say the cost can vary from a few $1,000s to hundreds of thousands of dollars. It could take as little as 60 days. It could take years. So those end results are based on how you go into the divorce and how quickly you can come to resolution. So as I mentioned, we want to try to limit, that's my goal, to limit the time and expense and energy you're spending on your divorce so that you can focus on your kids and have that money go to your kids, right? Instead of this, huge team of people that you may need, right? But I would argue that working with certain people or those team with a focused effort can actually save you money. So for instance, whether it's myself or another divorce coach or whatever your situation is, by helping you think about what's important to you, what your goals are, and how quickly you like to get this done, that's going to drive a lot of decisions that people make in divorce. As I mentioned, some things can go on, and we talked about mediation, arbitration, and other ways. They call it alternative dispute resolution, and divorce coaching is one of those, to come to decisions more quickly without having a prolonged, legal, expensive, time-consuming process. And so if you're just going to fight about little things, yeah, it's going to cost you more time and money and stress, and then you're going to affect the relationship with that other co-parent. And then that stress is going to filter down and your child's going to pick up on that. So do we really want that? We really want to see, okay, really, what do we need out of this divorce in terms of protecting our child and planning for their future? And how can we do that as quickly as possible by having a more collaborative type approach, kind of thinking about, how can we do this with the least amount of conflict possible?
Okay. So if you were to take away from your experience one piece that you keep seeing over and over again, and you're like, no, not again, in that process, what would that be? What might be the, oh my goodness, before you even come to me, think about X. What is that?
Yeah, so sadly, one reason for the complexity of divorce and the reason it becomes expensive and takes a long time is that both parents are not on the same page about the child's disability and the extent of it and what that means to the child and to them in the future. And so if we can agree on what the child's disability is and what that looks like and what they may need, then people are less likely to either be in denial or fight things, either because whether it's ego, whether it's they don't understand, haven't seen that side of the child, or whether they're trying to limit the financial obligation perhaps a parent might have. That becomes a big driving factor for these divorces being so complicated and taking a long time. But if we can quickly get through that or find a way to have discussions that really, like I said, take the child's best interests into account and not use it as an emotional type of game about trying to hurt the other person or get revenge or whatever it might be. What is the right thing to do for your child? And how can we get there and use our professionals to get this process done while still thinking about how we're going to take care of our child in the future? And so parenting plans come into play, decision making, different things. So my point is, let's get on the same page as to what our child needs and how can we work together to limit the time and expense the divorce will take, because as I mentioned, that's going to impact the child. And we don't want, we hope that the child will continue to have a good relationship with both parents. And how can we make that happen, which is the goal.
In part, what I heard you say is an objective assessment, and I'm not sure who would do that, so I'd like you to weigh in on this, really is essential. What is the long-term disability going to look like for this individual? So who do you use to actually make sure that you've got objective? Because my experience has been parents aren't necessarily on the same page. One may think that speech therapy 4 times a week is an absolute, or ABA or what have you, whereas the other sees no benefit and says, hey, I'm not sure this is going the right direction. So how do you get an objective assessment to really get that starting point?
Right. So we talked about some of the professionals that you can have on your team. And one of them, we talked about mental health professionals. But the other aspect of that, which I didn't discuss about using a psychologist or somebody similar to that, is that they can have a more neutral perspective and assess that child and kind of see what does that child need in their opinion. Granted, it's one opinion, but it's a professional opinion, which then you can maybe use as a basis, as a starting point for discussions, as opposed to, like you said, different parents may have different ways of seeing things and the amount of therapy and expense that's associated with that as well.
Okay. Okay. What haven't I asked you that would really be important for someone to hear about? What do you do if you're contemplating a divorce?
Yeah, so people just get overwhelmed with this process. And so most of my clients are women, but definitely it can help men as well. But I find that especially if they've been say stay-at-home moms or being the primary, even if they are working, if they've been the primary caregiver, a lot of the worry is what's going to happen to my child when they're with their dad, or I'm not around, or future plans, a whole nother issue as well. But how can we make the elephant, as you mentioned, not so big, right? Let's not take on the whole world. Let's just break it up as much as we can, because this whole thing becomes a big issue of overwhelm sometimes. And that's kind of my goal, is to help them see it a different way, break it down into manageable chunks, see what, have them think about maybe, top of their head, they haven't been through this, so they don't know, but that's where I can help guide them think about different things like, what is a good schedule for your child, whether you live in the same community or whether you live in different states. How can we make that work for the child? And so, to try to get through the overwhelm, and know that it'll be okay, and to develop their confidence to advocate. That's, I guess, an important part I want to share as well, is that we come in to this, or need to come into this, was my perspective, as our child's advocate. We're their advocate at school, we're an advocate in life, and we need to be their advocate in divorce. So whatever tone your divorce is taking, you're there to advocate for your child and what they need, and what their life will be like after this. So that's going to drive your decisions and things that you're going to be saying and doing as part of your divorce, because we want to protect them as much as we can so that they don't have to feel all the effects of this transition. Granted, things are going to change, and we want to ease them into transition as well. I guess that's something we didn't talk about. We talked about the stories, but how do we then, once the change has happened, how do we support them? And so we can create calendars. We can, make sure they have people to talk to or support them in that process. Make the handoffs from one parent to the other as stress-free as possible. Kind of hopefully encouraging the other parent and the child to spend the time together. You have some cases where maybe one parent is not really fully in the picture, but we want to hopefully help that happen. And so, how can we share information to have the other parent be comfortable with that child and their parenting time if they haven't had those responsibilities in the past, and hopefully make it a positive experience for everybody.
Okay. So you're in Texas.
I'm in Texas.
Obviously, in this case, in Oregon, I'm not, but if I were in the midst of a divorce, do you do this online? Can you do that? Or is it exclusively you really need to have someone present to hold the shoulder or whatever it may be?
Yeah, well, the nice thing about what I do, not being an attorney, is I'm able to do this anywhere. So my work, even with my local clients, is on Zoom and phone. So I can work with people no matter where they're located around the US or around the world as well. Because what I share and support is universal. Like we talked about, how can we get through this? How can I support you? How can I support your family? Give you different ways and perspectives on a situation, and that I can do no matter where you're located, and also no matter where you are in the process. Some people maybe just be thinking about divorce, or maybe some people are in the thick of it, or maybe it's even after divorce. I'm also a certified transition and recovery coach for divorce, so I can help you kind of plan your next steps as well, so that we're not stuck in the divorce, but we're thinking about the future and all of the wonderful things that we can do in our lives after that.
Okay, got it. So universally available. What else should I know? What else should our audience know about you or about your services?
Yeah, so I try to share as much as I can on social media. I'm trying to be more active there. So everything is under Special Family Transitions. I have Facebook page, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. You can find me as well. And so I do, like I said, share a lot of information in events like this, and been on a lot of podcasts. I do write a lot of articles as well. People can find, and they can reach out to me as well through my website, specialfamilytransitions.com. There's a contact form there, and I'm happy to follow up and share additional resources they might need, or set up a complimentary consultation to find out a little bit more about the situation and how I could possibly help them. So right now, as I mentioned, I do one-on-one coaching as a divorce coach, as we're normally working with one person, but definitely now I'm going to start hopefully doing more with both parents, so that we're trying to come at this together, whether it's through official mediation, but really even, I call it mediation, but it could just be just speaking together and coming to an agreement. And then you could take it to another professional to write it up. And then if you can't come to an agreement, then we have the arbitration, aspect as well. If you can't come to a decision, whether it's through yourselves, your divorce, your attorney or mediator, then we can arbitrate, a specific, area as well. So in the parent coaching, if you have been through divorce and, still not sure how to make it work, then I can definitely help you there as well. So that's my goal, is to help families who have a child with autism or other challenges in terms of neurodiversity, and different disabilities, whatever it might be, to help support them. You have lots of different experts out there who do a great job, but my focus is working with families with that needing that little extra effort.
Excellent. Well, Mary Ann, it's been a delight. I've learned some new tools that I can always use in my practice for those who may be going through a divorce. So thank you. Much appreciate. Do you have a phone you'd like them to contact you from, or do you prefer they contact you on email? What's your preference?
Yeah, email, website is fine. So my email address is Mary Ann, one word, MARYANN, @specialfamilytransitions.com.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much. It's been a delight.
Hi there. Hope you all enjoy the recorded presentation I had with Alan Kaddish, but I am happy to take any questions you might have. If you would like to raise your hand and get on screen with me, or for privacy, just put the questions in the chat and the admin Andrea will help us out with that. So, okay, so we've got a few minutes until we get some questions. So I want to share a bit more about advocacy when it comes to divorce for yourself as a parent and for your child. I mentioned a little bit earlier in the recording about how this process is something that we want to do our best to do, be our best person, our best self as we come across in these discussions, whether it be with our lawyers, whether soon to be ex, or whether ex, depending on what our situation might be. So in school, we've always advocated for our kids in terms of doing what's right for them, trying to find the right resources and representing them, because they can't verbalize their needs and their goals for themselves sometimes. So we're there to do that in divorce as well. So whatever you need to do to believe in yourself, to find out what is available to you legally, as well as things that you would like for your child, then definitely take this opportunity to share that and do that with confidence in a professional manner, of course, so that everybody can buy in and understand why those needs are important to your child. I will say that also creates opportunity for you to teach advocacy skills for your child. To me, that was an important part of what my kids came away with, that is seeing how I presented myself in my divorce. And I had my son, who's verbal, say, "Mommy, I'm so proud of you for what you're doing now and how you're helping people." And he said, "You're like a different person than you were before divorce." So that's a wonderful thing. That's one of the most rewarding things, I guess, as a mom to hear, is that the work that we do is being recognized by people all around us, including professionals who commented about how I handled myself, and now I'm able to help other people as well to do that. So just want to know that you know that you are enough. You have the ability to stand up for what's right for you and for your family. We don't want to do it in a conflict producing way, right? We want to do it as in a way that expresses what we believe and what we need and why it's important for our child, and hopefully get all the other parties to understand that and then work together for the needs of that child, as opposed to trying to do it in a combative or maybe conflict-ridden way. Then also share about how we can get the other parent maybe up to speed. If one parent has maybe had more of the caregiving responsibility and is concerned about how to share that information with another parent, or making sure that they have the information they need to comfortably and safely take care of that child during their parenting time, whether it's for a few hours or overnight or for a whole weekend or week. We want to make sure that both parties are comfortable with what it takes to take care of that child, whether it's medically, whether it's behaviorally, or connecting them with resources, or if there's an emergency. So we want to put together some kind of guide, reference guide, that's very neutral in tone in terms of maybe instructions and information about that child, how they respond to different things, what they need, maybe the schedule of meds, or different things that will be helpful for that parent to know if they haven't really been involved day to day when they were everybody was living in the home. From a different perspective, as a caregiver, that's, a lot of people who may be watching this, but also some of the people who are the primary breadwinners, they have concerns too. They want to be able to balance the work that they do and the demands of their profession to be able to provide for their child, and figure out how is the best way to schedule time with that child to make it the most effective time possible. So some people look at 50-50, but you've got to consider, is that really the best in your situation, or is it better to have a different schedule rather than have somebody have to find a caregiver during your time? Then, we want to look at those kind of things. Not to say that both parents can't be working and then each need caregiver, but it's important to also have, during each of your time that you may be taking care of your child, to have opportunities for people to come in and help. So even if you have your child for an entire week, let's say, you're going to need some downtime as well to take care of other things that you need to attend to, time for self-care, and time to take care of your other children. So we don't want to forget about the other kids that are in the household. Sometimes we have to spend a lot of time focusing on the needs of the child with autism or other special needs, but we want to consider all the people in the household and meeting their needs, and how do we make special time for everybody in the family to have the best support and situation that they can. And I know we're running out of time soon, so I invite you all to reach out to me if you have any questions on either what I've discussed or to discuss your personal situation. Happy to set up some time to do that. So once again, my website is specialfamilytransitions.com. Got a contact there form there. I have plenty of resources out there free of charge that you can kind of listen to, whether it's podcasts, articles, different resources that I've put out. And also I'll be creating some group coaching soon. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me. There'll be kind of a different price point than one-on-one coaching. And so that may be helpful to you. There was a question Alan brought up about the cost of working with all these professionals. And one thing I didn't mention during the answer was that by spending focused effort and time with a certified special needs divorce coach, you can actually save money in your divorce, because you're not having to perhaps rehash a lot of things with your attorney that are maybe not legal in nature, the things that they're not directly going to have to help you with. So as a divorce coach, I can help you get focused and organized for your meetings with professionals so that you've got less billable time with those professionals, because those legal bills do add up, as I very well know and have experienced myself, which is why I do what I do, so that you can come out this with a vision for your divorce and know that it's your divorce. It's not the attorney driving the divorce, it's you. It's the tone you want to take. It's the goals that you have for yourself and for your family, and that will definitely influence how things are handled. And happy to connect you with other resources as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out.